Welcome to Agape, Loving Biblical Greek. My name is Greg Bursey, and today we're covering 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. This is coming from the ESV. So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. Just briefly summarizing verses 1 through 6, Paul begins to speak about the revelations and visions that he saw, that he was given. He describes a man in Christ that he knew about 14 years ago, and this man had some tremendous experiences, being caught up to the third heaven, as he says. And he says several times he doesn't know if this was a bodily experience or a spiritual one. And then he says he knows that this man was caught up to paradise, though he again states that he was uncertain if it was bodily or spiritual. He says God knows. And he said that this man heard things that could not be spoken about. Paul says that he wants to boast on this man's behalf, but he says that he will only boast in weakness. And then he asserts that if he wanted to boast about it, he would simply be speaking the truth, but he refrains from boasting to keep others from viewing him a little bit too highly, more than they should. And then finally we come to verse 7. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using the ESV as our English version, and then we're going to be using the Morphological Greek New Testament, and just look at both of these side by side. We're going to walk through the Greek. We're going to walk through each phrase and word to help bring out some more meaning and to dive deeper into it. So the first thing we'll notice is, at least in the ESV, the first phrase in the verse is, so to keep me from becoming conceited. But in the Greek, that's actually a little bit further along in the sentence, which is not uncommon for Greek. For Greek, the word order does not matter for translation. The words could be jumbled up like crazy. It would translate the same. That might make it harder to translate. But in this case, it's just one of those examples that sometimes the Greek word order is different than what gets translated into another language, and that's okay. But over here in the Greek, dia hina me huperiromai, which is a fun word to say. So it's basically, for this reason, in order that not I may be conceited, I may become conceited. So Paul is saying here, the very first thing, at least it gets brought out in the English, in order that I will not become conceited. So he's setting up the rest of what he's going to say here. And actually the first thing he says in the Greek, kai te huperbole ton apokalypseon. So he's saying, and then this word huperbole, it means a throwing beyond. Metaphorically speaking, it could mean a superiority, a beyond measure, exceedingly. You get what he's saying there. This is actually where we get our word hyperbole. And in English, that means it's like a superiority or a purposeful exaggeration or an overstatement of something. And it's okay to note that we get our English word hyperbole from the Greek word huperbole. However, one thing we need to be careful of is that it would be a mistake to take the English definition of the word hyperbole and then read it back into the biblical text. This kind of mistake actually has a name. It's called eisegesis, reading into the text an idea that is not there. So we should not say something here like Paul is exaggerating. He's making some kind of overstatement. Again, it's easy to, in your mind, to go there to say, oh, because we get our English word hyperbole here, I'm going to then take that idea and read it back into the text and say, Paul is exaggerating here. That's something we should not do. That is a mistake in interpreting the text. Paul is simply using this word here to, in essence, say what he experienced 14 years ago is above and beyond anything he's known or experienced before, to the point where it'd be very easy for him to be conceited over it all. So he's saying that, and the throwing beyond, and the exceeding, and the superior, and the beyond measure revelations, the beyond measureness, the and of course, as the ESV translates, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations. It's in the plural there. And then the next part, he's saying, so because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, in order that I will not become conceited, or I may not become conceited because of the hina clause here. Then we have edothe moi skalops te sarki angelos satana. So we have, this is it was given to me, skalops, and this means it's translated a thorn in, at least in the ESV, but it means a pointed piece of wood, a stake, or a splinter, or a thorn. You get the idea there. So it was given to me, a thorn in the flesh. And then we have angelos satana. Angelos can be translated messenger or angel, depending on the context. And because we're only focusing on this one verse here, we can understand why that the ESV translates it a messenger. The word itself is angelos and is often translated as angel. So you could even read it an angel of Satan. Satana. That's at least in this Morphological Greek New Testament, the sigma there is capitalized, meaning that they're seeing this as a proper name, or at least a title. But Satana, that's the translation of that. It means adversary. It means devil, accuser. Satan. Satan would be more of a transliteration here, literally taking the Greek and turning it into English or whatever other language it's going into. So literally translating it across the language and to make it sound like whatever it needs to in that other language there. So it was given to me, a thorn in the flesh, messenger of Satan. Hina me kola fidze, hina me huperiromai. So in order that me, that's the first person personal pronoun, kola fidze, and it means to strike with the fist or to treat with violence. It's only used 5 times in our New Testament, once here and once here in 2 Corinthians 12:7. But I just wanted to note a few of the other places that it's been used. Matthew 26, when Jesus was standing before his trial, it says, then they spit in his face and beat him with their fists. Mark 14 says, and some began to spit on him and blindfold him and beat him with their fists. Both those places that word is used. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul speaks of when he was roughly treated. Same word. 1 Peter 2:20, he uses the word, or the translation in the ESV is harshly treated. The same Greek word is used there, kolafidze. So in order that me, kolafidze, would strike with the fist, would would treat violently. And the ESV says to harass me. It's getting at the idea there. In order that hina me huperiromai, in order that not I may become conceited. And I say may here because this is in the subjunctive. So, and when it's with a hina clause, so it's denoting purpose here. Huperiromai means to raise up over, to be exalted or haughty, to lift yourself up. And then we can see why the ESV chose to translate it conceited. So one thing I noticed here is, so we have, it was given to me thorn in the flesh, angelos satana. So there are actually two reasons why Paul sees this thorn in the flesh given to him. And I've brought that out here. Hiname kolafidze, in order to harass me, as the ESV puts it. And then the second one, hiname huperiromai, to keep me from becoming conceited. So Paul sees two reasons why this thorn in the flesh was given to him. One was to harass him, and the other one was to keep him from becoming conceited. And we can also see that huperiromai was repeated at the beginning. So this is a big part of why Paul sees that this was given to him. A big part of it was to keep him from becoming conceited. And remember, raised up, exalted, haughty, and lifted up. Paul is saying that this thorn was given to him to keep him from becoming conceited. And he says that twice in this one verse. So that's a pretty big emphasis. So looking back at this, what applications can we draw just from this one verse? Well, Paul says that he has received a thorn in the flesh. A thorn in the flesh. I've heard it said before that this is referring to the persecution that Paul and those around him received. I can understand that. I just think that this is a little bit more specific than that. Skalops te sarki, thorn in the flesh. I just think that this is more referring to Paul's physical sufferings. This thorn in the flesh was given to him to harass him. Paul speaks elsewhere about his physical sufferings, which we won't get into at this moment, but he had many physical sufferings. Physical suffering is a part of life, and it's not just a part of life in general. It's a part of life that even we as Christians are not exempt from, and it's something that we may have to deal with for an indefinite period of time, as long as the Lord allows it, just like Paul. And he calls this angelos satana, messenger of Satan. I think most of us fail to realize the significance of spiritual warfare in our everyday lives. Physical suffering may not just be physical. There may be things that are unseen that are causing it, or causing it to be worse. The story of Job is a great example of this. If you read Job chapter 1 and chapter 2, it goes into great detail of Job's physical sufferings, but the spiritual causes behind those, the spiritual forces going on around that. And I think that same is true today, that our physical world has a spiritual realm to it, that we do have an enemy, Satan, and I believe he's still as active today as he was then. And so all of the things that we have going on physically have a spiritual reality behind them as well. And I was thinking of Paul's dual purpose that he noted in why this thorn in the flesh was given to him: to harass him and to keep him from becoming conceited. So we can see in this Satan's purpose for this thorn in the flesh, that purpose was to harass him, That's the bad side of this. But we can also see God's purpose in giving him this thorn in the flesh, and that is to keep him from becoming conceited. And it reminds me of Genesis. Genesis 50, you meant this for evil, but God meant this for good. And in a very subtle way, maybe Paul is echoing that same sentiment here, that Satan means this to harass him, but God means this to keep him from becoming conceited. So since Paul repeatedly said in this verse, at least twice, to keep him from becoming conceited, I think that's a major emphasis that Paul is wanting us to understand here. There are not many worse postures that the Christian could take than that of conceit, thinking that we are so great or so much better than others, or even like Paul in this case. God may have done or may be doing great things in our lives. However, should that lead to conceit, especially a conceit that would overshadow and take away the spotlight from God, who is actually the one worthy of praise in all situations, then the best thing for us would be whatever makes us not conceited, whatever keeps us from becoming conceited and keeps us humble. Thanks for tuning in. I hope it was helpful. If you've enjoyed this, leave a comment on how it has impacted you. See you next time.